I want to go back a little bit and talk about something that didn't get enough attention, and that's the Lumix GH7. This came out at a really weird time. I do own a GH7. I've been happily shooting with it since its release. Came out after the G9 Mark II, of course, the first Micro Four Thirds camera to have phase detect autofocus. The GH7 expanded on the G9 Mark II with phase detect plus everything else. But then I think kind of got lost in this big move towards the full frame cameras from Lumix. Things like the S5 Mark II, the S5 Mark II X, the S9, and now we have the S1R Mark II, the S1 Mark II, the S1 Mark IIe, and I'm certain there are more Lumix full frame cameras to come. And in the midst of all of that, I think the GH7 just kind of got lost a little bit, which is interesting because the GH5 and the GH4 before it were both incredibly popular, even going all the way back to the GH1 and the GH2 with the hack to unlock extra bit rates, more advanced bit rates, and get the ultimate image quality out of those 1080p cameras. You've got the GH4, which introduced 4K in a consumer hybrid. You've got the GH5, which gave us 4K 60, crazy at the time with in-body image stabilization. I don't need to tell you how great the GH5 was, but then the GH6 was not that well received with no phase detect autofocus and some streaking issues on the sensor that, to be honest, never really affected me. I think it's only ever popped up once and it wasn't a problem, but you know, to his credit, the GH5 didn't have phase detect, which at the time everyone was clamoring for a good autofocus in video. Well, the GH7 finally solved that with phase detect autofocus, improved on the shortcomings of the GH6. But really, I don't see many people talking about it, hyping it up, giving it credit for what it's delivered, which for most things is really what is now the new feature for everybody, the new highlight, the S1 Mark II. The GH7 is basically that same camera, just in a Micro Four Thirds form factor, meaning the sensor is smaller. The body isn't necessarily smaller. As we know with Micro Four Thirds cameras, they got bigger over time for some reason, which a lot of people don't like. Me personally, I just like a camera that feels comfortable to hold in my hand. And the GH7 is that, but it is a little bit bigger. It is pretty heavy, relatively so for a Micro Four Thirds camera because it's got the fan, it's got all these great things. But everyone is praising the Lumix S1 Mark II for its cutting edge features, its groundbreaking, the dynamic range, the sensor speed, all this stuff. And all the bells and whistles, 32-bit float recording. You've got timecode over Bluetooth. And it just made me look twice at the GH7 going, wow, this camera really is incredible. Yes, it has the phase detection. It's got great IBIS, good resolution for Micro Four Thirds. It's got the 32-bit float recording. It has timecode over the flash sync port, which is one of the critical features you'll find yourself needing from time to time, is just the ability to take timecode into a camera and not sacrifice the audio port. It's one of the interesting phenomenons I've been dealing with lately is if I'm syncing multiple cameras and I'm running a tentacle sync, let's say to the audio port, the 3.5 millimeter input on all these different cameras like the S9, like the S5 Mark II, which don't have native timecode support. So I have to sacrifice my audio input. I need a camera or two that can record audio, good quality audio. Bare minimum 24-bit, but now it's 32-bit on the GH7. I need to be able to record audio, but I still want timecode, and the GH7 can do that. And let's also not forget that Micro Four Thirds still has some of the best glass, most functional, usable focal ranges in zoom lenses that I could ever dream of. The Leica 10-25, the 25-50, and the 50-200 are such a perfect combination of lenses and focal lengths that I'm still frustrated and irritated that the L-mount, the full frame cameras, don't have an equivalent. We just got or announced the 24-60, which is close in spirit, but still isn't a true match to the 10-25, which the full frame equivalent would be 20-50. I'm less concerned about the aperture. I want that to be consistent, a constant aperture rather, for the full zoom range, for the full focal length. But whether it's a 2.8, f2, or even a 1.7 like the 10-25, I just want the functionality of the focal lengths. And I get that with the GH7. and I get that less on these full frame cameras. The 24-60 is close, and it probably solves the problem for most people, and it probably is the lens I would recommend as the new, best, most flexible lens for L-mount, but it still isn't quite as good as what we have on Micro Four Thirds, which is the 10-25. I think that is probably the most useful range of focal lengths that I could ever ask for. And I get it on a camera like the GH7 that has phase detect, 32-bit float, great dynamic range, all the frame rates you could ever want. It truly is very similar to the S1 Mark II, although it's over $1,000 cheaper. And the only thing it's really missing on the GH7 is open gate 60. You can shoot open gate-ish, but it's cropped on the GH7 60 frames a second. Yeah, you can. But it's not the full sensor. So that is the one advantage of the S1 Mark II is that you can do the full sensor, actual open gate, 5.1K at 60 frames a second. That's pretty powerful, pretty incredible full frame camera. But the GH7 is very, very close. And there may be a time and a place where you want or need full frame, where you don't want Micro Four Thirds. But if you're a fan of Lumix and you have Micro Four Third lenses, the GH7 is the pinnacle, the crowning achievement of Micro Four Thirds. And I don't know that we'll even get a GH8. I don't know how well the GH7 sold. It doesn't feel like it's talked about to any degree where people are actively using it like they were with the GH5. I think for the most part, the entire industry has shifted to full frame cameras. Now that even Lumix has done that themselves, right? It's probably a smart move, have full frame cameras to compete with Sony, with Canon, with Nikon, etc. And now we even have manufacturers moving to medium format, whatever you consider that to be, but bigger than full frame, certainly. So that's the next frontier, the next horizon. But don't overlook the GH7. If you have or want the 10-25, which I highly recommend. It's the best Micro Four Thirds lens I've ever used in terms of optical performance, autofocus, handling. It's a big lens. It's just an expensive lens for Micro Four Thirds, but it's so useful. 10-25, probably my favorite lens of all time at this point. I'll have to see once the full frame L mount, the 24-60, once that comes out, how I feel about being a little bit more restricted, being pushed towards the middle, longer end range of that lens. I would have preferred a 20-50, I think, but we'll see. Don't sleep on the GH7. It's too good to pass up. You can probably find them out there used now. I don't know what the inventory, what the stock, what the availability is like, but if you have that need for a cheaper camera that can do everything the S1 Mark II does for the most part, and you're willing for it to be Micro Four Thirds, you can get a lot out of the GH7. Timecode being one of like the biggest ones for me, but it's got the flip screen as well. It's got the thermal management. It's got all the codecs and frame rates you could ever want or dream of. Again, I keep saying it, but the autofocus finally, everyone wanted the GH6 to have phase detect. And when they finally did it with the GH7, it was probably too little, too late. So if you ever get the chance, or you need, or you want, for whatever reason, you know, if these are features you're looking for, 32-bit float, check out the GH7. It deserves more credit than it ever got. And it's something I'm still using to this day, even though I have the S5 Mark II, even though I'm probably going to pick up an S1 Mark II at some point, even though I have an S9, even though I have a G9 Mark II, the GH7 has this odd set of special features that make it incredibly unique that nothing else really touches. I don't know if that's intentional or it's by accident, but I think it's overlooked because people don't realize how powerful that combination of features actually is. You can easily look at any spec sheet on B&H, on Amazon, on Adorama, wherever you shop, and you can break it down and look at all the features and say, okay, yeah, this is what it does, and check all the boxes. But when you add them all together and you realize how other cameras have similar features but don't still quite sync them all up, even the S1 Mark II, the timecode is via Bluetooth. which now that's a compatibility issue if you don't have the right Bluetooth platform. You know, if they're supporting Atomos Ultra Blue Sync, I don't know if they're going to support Tentacle Sync. So the S1 Mark II still may be a camera that I need to sacrifice at least one of the audio channels to timecode. I don't have to do that on the GH7. I can have all 4 of my audio tracks, true good audio, 32-bit float audio, and I have timecode as a separate port. Maybe that's something we'll see on future S cameras, the S1II Mark II. Maybe it'll have a dedicated timecode port, or maybe they're just shifting everything to Bluetooth, which is probably smart in the long run, as long as it's well supported by all the timecode standards that are out there. But right now, when I'm comparing all my cameras, all the devices that I have, how I combine them all into one unified kit, one unified package and workflow that can have multiple cameras, capturing the images that I need or that I want to see to execute that creative vision, the GH7 still plays a pivotal role in all of that. Oddly so. Pair it with the 10-25 Leica lens, the 25-50, the 50-200 for your zoom lenses. And I'd also recommend picking up the Leica 42.5, that 85mm full frame equivalent. 42.5, that Leica on Micro Four Thirds just sings. You go look at reviews, look at other, don't take my word for it. I mean, I can tell you that the 42.5 Leica lens, the 1.2 on Micro Four Thirds, is a beautiful lens. And it's easily another easy addition to any Micro Four Third kit. Small, lightweight, for an 85mm equivalent at such a fast aperture. You want shallow depth of field on Micro Four Thirds, pick up that Leica 42.5 1.2. It's a wonderful lens. Very like razor sharp, beautiful bokeh. It's an awesome prime lens. And that those 4 lenses is all you could probably ever want or need out of Micro Four Thirds. It'll cost you a good bit, but maybe it's stuff you already have. And if you were shooting with the GH5, certainly I could understand skipping the GH6. I didn't. I really like the GH6, but it did have some compromises or trade-offs or just sacrifices at the time that, not having phase detect changed a little bit of like what I was able to do, not to any detriment, but it's just different. GH7 solved all that and more. And really, if you're looking at the S1 Mark II, arguably the GH7 is right there along with it in just a different mount, different lens selection. So I wish more people talked about the GH7. I think people just, this move to full frame has, I don't know, maybe people haven't given the attention they need to Micro Four Thirds still. It's just, we've moved on from it. We've passed it by. And maybe that's the future. Maybe we won't get a GH8 and Micro Four Thirds is basically will be phased out. I don't know. I can't predict the future. It seems like that is the trend. I don't see a lot of people clamoring for more Micro Four Third cameras. They're out there. Maybe you're one of them. There are the advocates. There are the enthusiasts. Maybe we'll get a few more Micro Four Third cameras out there, but it seems like everything's moving towards full frame. So if the GH7 is the last Micro Four Thirds camera that I ever buy, I will not regret that decision. It is a very powerful, useful, amazing camera that more people should give credit to.